Hello, here we go. Chapter 6, Big Business. Boo, big business. Those multinational corporations, bad guys in all the latest Bond films, going to take over the world. Well, there's some bad ones, but I think there's mostly good ones that help us, even if they are kind of bad personally. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. Nice to see you. Chapter 7, Big Business. Um, and in this chapter, we're basically talking about what would be 8.3 from our textbook, which is corporations and multinational corporations. So big business. And so the first question is something from that chapter we already talked about, but to emphasize, like, so what? Why should you care or appreciate it? Number one, what are two characteristics of big business? Why are they important? First characteristic he talks about is limited liability. If you remember, the drawbacks of sole proprietorships and partnerships was unlimited liability, where you could lose your personal finances, your personal assets, if your business were to fail because it's all on you. And you've got to pay your debts no matter what. But then once you get a corporation, that becomes its own legal entity. And so the only things at stake in its success or failure are whatever assets have been specifically invested into that company, and anybody who's involved in that company, especially the stockholders, or specifically the stockholders, they do not have unlimited liability. They just have the danger of losing whatever stocks they bought in that business. That's really, really important, because when people know they only have limited liability, they're willing to take more risk. And he talks about that corporations are able to become big and powerful and operate at large economies of scale because you have more people, more resources, more investment than in the previous two models, sole proprietorships and partnerships, because there is specifically limited liability. And so people are more willing to participate, more willing to get involved because they know it's not, if the business fails, they're not going to lose everything. That's one reason why people are in the stock market, because they're buying shares in companies where they only have the limited liability. And I can participate in all sorts of different companies. I can have a mutual fund with stocks in all sorts of different businesses. I'm an owner of many different businesses, but if I had to take personal liability for those things, there's no way I'd get involved because I don't know those businesses. I don't know what's going on. I don't know what's going to succeed or fail. And so I'm not going to risk my money and potentially my personal finances in that. But if I can just have limited liability and buy a little bit of stock here and there, then I'll get involved. And for the businesses, that means a lot of capital, a lot of investment, a lot of participation in resources that allow them to grow because people are willing to take the lower risk. And what that means is you get these big companies, we get this thing called economies of scale, that the bigger a business gets, oftentimes the cheaper it can produce whatever good or service it's providing. That when you get to a certain, that's why, if you buy in bulk, this whole idea, if you buy in bulk, the whole Costco idea, then all of a sudden you can get a lower price. So only big corporations with lots of investment and lots of people, stockholders, and people providing a large amount of resources and expansion can offer these large economies of scale, which when you hear that, just think of lower prices. And so we don't have these lower prices and these massive economies of scale without a business model that allows people to have limited liability. Okay, the second one is the corporate structure, the corporate governance. That again, they are not run by one person who's the owner or a group of people who are partners running the business. They are run by a corporate governance structure, which typically follows. And so to answer this, why this is important, we're going to go into question number 2. Describe governance structure of corporations. Why is this valuable? What role does specialization play? The basic corporate governance structure is you have the stockholders who are actually the owners of that company, but they're willing to do so, even though they're clueless like me, because they only have limited liability, and because the people in charge of actually governing the corporation are not the stockholders, but the board of directors. They're directing the company. So you have the stockholders, then you have the board of directors, and then they don't even actually manage the day-to-day businesses of the company. They hire executives, this idea of CEO, chief executive officer, or CFO, chief financial officer, on and on and on. I don't even know all of those. COO, chief operations officer, there's all sorts of them. But they offer the executives, again, executives carry things out. They're the ones actually directing the corporation. And then then executives typically have managers, and basically departmental employees, depending on whatever kind of corporation this is. So you have stockholders, board of directors, executives, and then managers. So you have this kind of split structure of governance where what a sole proprietor or partners all carry within themselves, you have spread out over different groups within a corporation. This is really valuable for two reasons. One is specialization. And when you separate out the different roles, you then have everybody doing what they do best. Not only what they have the most skill at, but also what they're most motivated to do. When you don't have to do everything yourself, you're able to focus on the thing you're really good at. And somebody else who's good at something else that you'd hate to do, they can do that. So you have people, hey, I have money. I want to invest in your company. I don't know how to run that company. I don't want to run that company, but I can get involved because, hey, I have some money. Go turn a profit and I'll be happy. Increase the value of my stock. Or I can oversee a board. I can oversee this business. I'm good at leadership. I'm good at uh, and directing the market, or I'm good at finding good leaders and executives. I'll be on the board of directors, or I could be an executive, or I can be a manager. And so you've separated out the different roles, and people can come in and play just their specialized, and this is the role of specialization, what they're good at. And again, like when we did the Valentine card thing, when you specialize a role, just look at how more efficient people get because they're focused on just their role and not everything else. And so that's a together benefit to the structure of these corporations is that you're allowing people to specialize again in what they're best at and what they want to do. Because again, when they're motivated, they're going to do that really well. If you have everybody motivated in their role, that entire entity is going to be really successful. And so that means also this idea of expertise, that when you divide things up, you get people who are good at what the specific role they're doing. And you're not asking people to do something else that maybe they're not an expert at. They can instead delegate that out to the other structure. Board of directors can find a CEO that can't do what they can do. CEOs can find managers that can't do what they can do. And so everybody is operating in their optimal position of expertise. And you say, well, what if they're not good at it? Well, that's profits and losses. Fire them and find somebody who can actually do it right. And so you're getting specialization and you're getting this enhancement of expertise in each of the roles or each of the stages of the corporation. Three, how is corporate governance often misunderstood? Why is this a mistake? He talks about that when you see this separation of authority or governance through all these different groups, he talks about people see it as undemocratic, that you have all the stockholders, they're the owners of the company, but they don't really have any say in the company. Or you have all you have this kind of just this board of directors overseeing everything, and that they'll exploit the stockholders, they'll exploit the workers, just for their own, their own profits. And so they're making decisions, not what's good for the whole or for all this, again, the people. So that's undemocratic, but what's just good for them and their profits. And he says, you're going to have this exploitation. And he says, he goes, this is true. You have probably some pretty bad board of directors and people who have not led their stockholders or led their employees in the right direction. And he says, but you know what? That's not unique to corporations. That happens in any entity. That happens in a family, with people who are in charge. That happens in a school. That happens in a government. And so you're going to have, wicked, selfish people doing that. It's not a particular issue with corporations as it is just human nature. And all the more then, if you have a business built on profits and losses, that kind of exploitation won't last because it's not going to work and it's going to fall apart. And something that is governed appropriately with people's interests taken into consideration will take its place. Whereas when that happens in government and there's no role of profits and losses, you got to hope it's a democratic government and people have a chance to do the same thing and get rid of those exploiters and vote them out of office. But again, businesses, when it's exploited, you're in less danger because again, profits and losses mean people are not going to put up with those who aren't doing their job properly for very long. So they say it's undemocratic, but it's not really different from anywhere else. And the threat of profits and losses help keep people honest. Again, you have that board of directors, they want profits. They can't have losses. And so they're only going to do things that make sense for the company, what keeps it healthy and keeps it using and distributing the resources in the most efficient way that the consumers want. And if you were to try to make it more democratic, if you were to try to say, oh, no, all the stockholders should have a say in the company, or, everyone should get a vote, you're going to have the opposite of what we just talked about, the benefits of the governance, of the corporate governance structure. You're going to lose the expertise. You're going to have people making decisions who don't know what they're talking about. Yes, they get to vote, But why should they have a vote? They don't know anything about that department. You don't want their input because that's not their lane. They have a different lane. They have a different specialization. Um, and so, yeah, you're going to lose the benefit of having people know what they're talking about. And we see this even now. One of the scary things about the money going to businesses, the loans to help them through this economic crisis we're in, is that there's I don't know if there's passages that if they take the money, then all of a sudden the government gets to have input on their boards. The government gets to have input on how they run their companies, and that's again, and that's an anathema to the efficient running of those businesses, because what does that person know anything about running that business profitably, and what is their personal motivation for that business to be profitable? They're going to be bringing in input and direction and making decisions that are completely outside what that company exists to do potentially. And so you don't want democratic governance of these corporations. You want people in there who are motivated by profits and losses and who are specialized and experts in their particular position. Number four, what complaints are often made against executive compensation? What is often misunderstood by this view? And so he talks about that a lot of people just see the salaries of these CEOs and the COOs and whoever who working for these big businesses, and it's just like, what a crime! How could they be? And they compare it to the salaries of their employees, etc. And they just say, this is unfair. It's exploiting. All the more, sometimes you'll see. We'll talk about that a second. That a CEO will get fired, or he'll be asked to leave because the company's failing. But even when he leaves the failing company and people are losing their jobs, he still gets these millions and millions of dollars. And again, emotionally, that seems wrong. But the point of economics is what makes sense. What do the facts actually tell us? And he says, first of all, when you compare these executive salaries to other high-profile positions of entertainers and athletes in our society, the wealthiest quarterbacks, the wealthiest actors, the wealthiest musicians, they're actually not making very much compared to them. Many times, much less for all the hours and hours, the 80 hours a week they're putting in to their job running these incredibly complicated corporations. They're making $10 million, but that's nothing compared to some of these other figures within our society. A baseball player making $30 million. And so it's not really that out of proportion given the responsibility and the position that they hold. He also just says, you get what you pay for. Think about it. If you're a board of directors and you have a corporation that's doing billions and billions of dollars, and you have millions of dollars invested in this company, or the stockholders have all this money invested, are you going to try to be chintzy and just, I'm not going to pay the person in charge of this huge operation very much, because I don't want them to think they're special, or I don't want the lower employees to be jealous? No, that you're going to get what you pay for. If you have all that money at stake, if you have that much responsibility to run, you need to pay that person accordingly. You need to make sure, hey, this person is worth $20 million a year because we do $500 billion in business, or whatever, again, throwing out maybe a big number there, but we have a lot at stake. I'm not going to just hire somebody for basic wages because of what they actually have to take care of. My pastor, this is a nonprofit at our church, but he had somebody in charge of the finances of our church, and our church was supporting, lots of different ministries, including overseas churches in Africa and South America. And there was somebody brought in to run the finances, and he's like, I'm paying that person a lot of money. And yes, we're a church and we're not for profit, but I got to pay this person. I got to compensate them accordingly because they're vital, and hundreds of people, thousands of people depend on them doing their job well. So I'm going to pay what I want to get out of this. And so again, that's an important way to look at this. And then finally, with the idea of what's called a golden parachute, or CEOs who seem to have failed, they're being fired, maybe their corporation is going into bankruptcy, or it's just lost a lot of stock value and they're leaving, and yet they leave with, a golden parachute. The idea is that they're bailing out of the company, but they're given, several millions of dollars of severance pay or what compensation as they leave. And he, again, just makes the practical point, as emotionally wrong as that seems. He says, look, this is a divorce. They're kicking this guy out. They're breaking a contract. They're firing this employee. And we can do this quickly and give them just, enough money to leave quietly, or we can fight them and try to change the contract and deny them all this money and make this a real protracted, ugly firing, separation. He calls it like a divorce. And he says that makes no economic sense for the company. It's better to pay the high golden parachute to get that person out of there as quickly as possible so they can get a new person in that position to succeed. And it's worth economic sense for the company, for the stockholders, for the benefit of everyone to get them out of there quickly. And that no one's going to benefit from nickel and diming that person on their way out. Um, Again, it's profits and losses. What makes the most sense? And again, we have an emotional reaction when we see these things, but we have to look at, well, what's the alternative? What actually is saving money? What is actually doing better for the company and for the people who have investments in that company? And a lot of times those high separation packages, those golden parachutes, make a lot of sense.